The Republican Zone is brought to you by Drew Murray, a modern view from the Republican lens, covering local and national news, understanding that one size doesn't fit all when it comes to politics. The Republican Zone airs Wednesday from 1 to 2 p.m. and Saturday from 3 to 4 p.m.
Hello, you are listening to Usula Radio. I am Drew Murray, and I am the host of the Republican Zone. So, my listeners there out on Facebook, I have a guest today, my friend Michael Meehan, who is the chairman of the Republican City Committee. So, welcome, Michael.
Thank you, Drew, for having me here.
You're welcome. So, anyone who's listened to my show, they know that I'm a proud graduate of St. Joseph's Prep. So whenever someone is in here who either went to the Prep or went to where Michael went, LaSalle, we have to say something. And a Prep guy is always going to bust the chops of a LaSalle guy.
Well, my father wanted us to get a Catholic education, so we went to LaSalle and not to St. Joe's Prep.
Well, Prep guys, we'll joke in two ways. One way is we say LaSalle guys don't even know where the city of Philadelphia is, but Michael lives in the city, so at least you know where it is.
Oh yes, I know very well.
But you have to leave. You do have to leave the city of Philadelphia in order to get to your high school. Where in the Prep, we've stayed in the city of Philadelphia. So we're more loyal. We're still at 17th and Girard.
Although as challenging as it is, having stayed there, because you went through a fire and rebuilt.
That's right.
And, so, I think I'm going to state another thing, that they had an opportunity probably to move out to the university and gave up that opportunity.
Well, there is a story there, and actually, it's a challenging, and when I went to the Prep, it was considered a pretty challenging neighborhood. And when it burned down, I wasn't born yet, but it was in the 1960s, and they thought about moving, and maybe even out to the college, to the university. But the thought was, the person leading the Prep at the time, I forget what the father's name was, but he said, we need to be a beacon of light to this neighborhood. And if we leave, it's going to be leaving the neighborhood behind. And wouldn't it be the right message to the neighborhood?
I'm very familiar with the neighborhood.
Yeah.
Because you may not know it, but I'm on the Board of City Trust, and we run Girard College.
Nice. Yeah, sure.
Okay, so we are across the street from you.
Nice.
So,
Absolutely. No, yeah. Girard College very well. When my dad coached at the Prep, that's where he played all of his games. And the second thing we Prep guys like to say, and we joke around, we love, it's like we love to hate each other. We're like LaSalle and the Prep it's like the Eagles and the Cowboys. If you didn't get into the Prep, then you go to LaSalle. So, and we also of course talk about the football team, which it's been a while since LaSalle has won a football game against the Prep.
Well, I think they haven't won in the last 7 meetings, okay? But for many, many years, we never even played each other because the Prep was in the Southern Division and LaSalle was in the Northern Division. And they didn't have this whole rivalry, but now all these PIAA class rankings and all that, really the two most powerful teams in Philadelphia Catholic League are St. Joe's Prep and LaSalle.
Absolutely.
Okay, so
the rivalry was there when I was there. When I played football at the Prep, there was still the Southern and the Northern divisions, and we played LaSalle on Thanksgiving every year. So
you were a little later.
Yeah.
While I was there, I was a little earlier. We never played the Prep at that time. So while we have friends who went to the other school, okay, it's not like we had a regular match that we're going to fight about.
Oh, and things were totally different then. I mean, when I was there, we were pretty good. I'd say that's the start of when the Prep and LaSalle started getting good. But when I was younger, the Prep LaSalle football game on Thanksgiving was basically the 2 0-10 teams were playing each other. So there were many years where they were not very good. But so that's enough about Prep LaSalle football and schools. It is an incredible rivalry. So, Michael, you are the chairman of the Republican City Committee. So what's some background on the city committee? What's their mission? What do you guys do?
The city committee is basically to keep a two-party choice in the city of Philadelphia. And believe it or not, while we have not won a lot of elections, believe it or not, many of the greatest things in this city were done by bipartisan. Okay, and that's what people forget. When you think about the convention center and the commuter tunnel, and you think about the stadiums, These are all things that we did bipartisan by Philadelphia Republicans joining with Democrats to get people from around the state to give money. The Constitution Center is another one that's perfectly a bipartisan
Sure.
location.
So if people don't know, so there's 66 wards in the city of Philadelphia, and so on the Democratic side there are 66 ward leaders, and on the Republican side there are 66 ward leaders. So and you basically you're the chairman of those 66 wards, in
Right,
essence, yeah.
and believe it or not, let's just say it's very challenging in some areas of the city. Number one, to find Republicans, or let alone to keep them, because most people want their party affiliation to help them get a job and help them sustain their families.
And I bet most people are surprised that when I became a Republican, and I looked at the 66 wards, I was surprised that there were 66 ward leaders in the city of Philadelphia on the Republican side.
Right.
I assumed that there were a lot of positions not filled, but there are 66. Maybe there's one or two vacancies now, but for the most
Right.
part, there's always.
We've always
66.
tried to fill them, but I've always tried to get somebody from the neighborhood.
Sure.
Because I want them to have a basis to know the neighborhood in which that ward is located. Okay, you just can't take people who have no connection with that area and just make them a ward leader. Okay, and it's a challenge.
Yeah, and you're not required to live in the neighborhood, or you're not required to live in the ward.
No.
So which that actually was a surprise to me as well, and I think most people, both on the Democrat and the Republican side, probably live in their ward, but there are a few exceptions where, if there was a vacancy, then someone from outside the ward filled the position.
Right. Well, actually, we've had ward leaders who've lived outside the city for a long time. Okay, and some moved there after they became ward leader, but their old neighbors kept them as a ward leader. Okay, because that was their people.
Sure. No, and they know well, and their job is in many ways, on election day to get out the vote, to get the
Right.
committee people, the foot soldiers out there at each division, at each polling station, getting people to vote for the candidates.
Right.
So.
Okay, and that's how you get candidates too, because you get one disgruntled neighbor, all of a sudden he's mad about this or that. My grandfather got involved in politics for one reason. The city of Philadelphia would not put sewers on Rising Sun Avenue, and he was a devoted member of the St. Williams Parish. And in order to get sewers, he ran for committee person. And then after he won as a committee person, the ward leader wouldn't recognize him. So he ran against him, and he became the ward leader. Okay, so, and believe it or not, at that time, the 35th Ward was everything in Philadelphia north of the Frankfurt Creek. That's a huge portion of the city that was there. So.
Sure, and that's an interesting point, because I think a lot of people, I think most people, the general public, don't even realize how it works. So a committee person is elected. So on election day, if it's a year where committee people are up for election, there's two committee people for each division, and then within a division, within a ward, those committee people elect the ward leader. Right. So. Unless there's a vacancy, and then if there is a vacancy, then you as the city committee chairman appoint.
Get to
is
a
that
point.
the way it works? Okay. All right. So we're coming up. So this Tuesday it's election day. It's November 5th. It's a big election. There's a lot of local elections. There are also at a state level
Yes.
that there's an election, and it's the Superior Court. And I think a lot of people, and again, it's the general public, they probably walk in and they might not even know that there are elections for judges for Superior
But other
Court.
than the flash moment of these advertisements for them, fortunately, there's no reason for anybody to know these people, okay, on either side, okay? Yes, I do know Megan McCarthy King, and I know Christy Lee Peck, but I also know Dan McCaffrey, okay? I've known him for years, and I
He's
knew
a
his
North Catholic guy, am I remember?
No,
he's a
judge guy.
That's right.
Okay, and believe it or not, he's still up. I don't know if he still does, but he used to coach rugby up at Father Judge. Okay, and I saw him up there because I had a son that was playing rugby and challenging St. Joe's Father Judge, which is a long old time parish. Okay, but it too was having challenges too, in that the choice is really between paying tuition or going to charter schools or public schools. And in that particular neighborhood, for the most part, people are going to charters or public schools, and sometimes they change back and forth.
Sure. No. It's a big decision where to send your children. I know. I went to an independent Catholic school is where my children go. So we didn't even go to the local parish school in Philly. But we looked at charters. We looked at public schools. But so I actually printed out. I look at these courts and these judges,
Right.
and I feel like I'm a well-educated voter. But you would hear, all right, you have the Superior Court, you have the Supreme Court, you have the Common Pleas Court. I kind of knew what each one of them did, but I didn't fully know and understand what any of them are. But so I actually printed up this it's I'll call it a pyramid, and it's great. And so you have the minor courts. That's kind of the bottom of the pyramid. That's the
In
lower
Philadelphia,
courts.
those are the municipal
Yes,
courts. Okay,
and
or
Michael's an
traffic.
attorney, so yeah, so you probably do know these things.
Oh yeah, I know where they are.
That's
okay?
right, exactly.
Because, on occasion, I've had to represent people there. Okay, and in fact, I know about Common Pleas Court because that's the next level.
So that's the next yep.
Basically, they do civil cases and they do criminal cases of higher severity. Okay, when I say severity, most of the ones in municipal court are all, other than preliminary hearings, they were all misdemeanors. Okay, which are lesser events. Okay, so they also involve traffic, drunk driving, and petty theft, and most of the drug and alcohol cases are there.
And above the common pleas, then you have the appellate courts, which
Right.
is Superior Court, Commonwealth Court, and then above that is the Supreme Court,
Right.
all the appellate.
The Superior Court hears cases basically on everything that's not government related, okay? Because the Commonwealth Court is basically all your appeals involving government agencies and appeals, like a workers' comp appeal would be there. If you're appealing a real estate tax assessment, your appeal would go there. And it's just, and the highest court is the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania, which everybody that doesn't get there, to tell you the truth, because if I have to ask for permission to appeal to them, there's, other than the death penalty, I don't think there's any appeals of right to the Supreme Court. So it's a challenge.
So and one of the reasons I bring that up, so looking at the races where Republicans are running with, that you could vote for Republicans on Tuesday, there's no common pleas judges as Republicans running, but we have two running for the Superior Court, which it's a huge election, and it's an election that most people don't even realize until they walk into the voting booth that you're voting for a judge of the Superior Court.
Well, in order for most people to know, they'd have to be sending out huge mailers or doing heavy television, because there's really no people other than maybe defendants and victims and parents of defendants or victims that know what the courts are.
No, and I know what the courts were, but until I didn't know I'll be honest, I didn't even know the pure structure until I Googled it. That's what we do nowadays. We Google things, and I learned. So we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to delve into more of the actual election on Tuesday. We'll be back.
Being prepared is a part of who you are, but it's especially important in the case of a disaster. Be informed about possible emergencies in your area. Make a plan that covers where you'll go in an emergency. Build a kit with the things you need to survive. There's no one more capable of planning for your situation than you. Start your plan today. Go to ready.gov/myplan.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma. I have a mentor, and she convinced me to continue my education. No one receives a diploma alone. If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, go get it. You can do it.
Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org.
No one gets a diploma alone. You need support.
Welcome back. You were listening to Usula Radio. I am Drew Murray, and I am the host of the Republican Zone. I'm here with my friend Michael Meehan, the chairman of the Republican Committee. And we've been talking about, well, we talked a lot about Prep LaSalle, of course, and then we got into kind of how the court system in the state of Pennsylvania works. And now we're going to kind of get down to the actual candidates. So there's no Republicans are running for the Court of Common Pleas, but we do have two Republicans running for Superior Court, Megan McCarthy King and Christy Lee Peck. What are your thoughts? And I've met both of them, and I know you know both of them.
Christy Lee Peck is a Court of Common Pleas judge in Cumberland County, which is the one right across the Susquehanna River from Harrisburg. Megan McCarthy King is an deputy assistant DA from Chester County. She's involved in a lot of sexual assault cases, okay? And, that's all very challenging, but I hate to say it, that it's very popular today trying to defend kids. So she's the one that's challenging people who have done the wrong by kids.
Sure.
So it'll be very interesting.
And who are they? And I forget. So they're running against.
Well, Danny
McCaffrey from Philadelphia,
and there's I think she's a judge from Pittsburgh running. Okay, so we're just trying to carve out just enough votes for them to.
And two will make it through.
Two will make it. Okay, and what most people don't realize is there are 67 counties in Pennsylvania. Okay, 52 of which are controlled by Republicans. Okay. And they really they don't really care for the city of Philadelphia.
Sure.
Because they fight for the lion's share of money, and state reps who go up there are all involved with bringing home the bacon to their people. Okay? Well, there's only so much bacon. Okay? And whether or not you're in the majority or the minority, you got to take care of the other side piece somewhat. And whether or not you have to be able to talk to Democrats, okay? And you don't know this, but last week or within the last 2 weeks, I appeared at former Mayor John Street's class at Temple University with Bob Brady, okay? Simply because, we've lived through the experience.
Sure.
And my father actually helped John Street get elected president of city council.
Oh, is that right? The council president? Nice.
Okay, so, at that time we had, I think, four or five city council people. Okay, so he had to reach out to the other side. Today, with fewer and fewer Republicans on council and in the city, there's less a reach across the aisle, except, when Bob Brady's down in Washington, he was co-mayor of the Capitol, and some of his best friends were Republicans down there.
Sure.
So he had a personal relationship with them.
And for those who don't know who Bob Brady is, he is the chairman of the Democratic City Committee. Is he a former congressman at this point? He is former at this point. So he is. He's not my congressperson.
Well, but that whole thing came about because of the whole reapportionment thing done in 2018, which was really overnight. Okay, while it's supposed to be reapportionment is supposed to be done every 10 years, a Democrat filed a thing challenging the constitutionality of it, and the Supreme Court took it up.
Was it the constitutionality of that it gets done every 10 years, or the way it was done the last time?
Well, they're saying how it was done last time. But, Drew, most people don't know. That was really a combination of things between Democrats and Republicans. And I'm not sure they're always on the right side, but they at least talked about it.
Sure.
Okay?
I think that's true on a local level now, a state level, and a national level. People just don't talk to the other side.
Well, that's exactly right, okay? Because, even this year, with the whole Sherri Cohen thing, wanting to run, after she was removed from the ballots, I actually ran into her brother at a Bar Association, CLE, on charter schools. And at one point, I went off and exploded at it simply because a friend of mine was involved with doing 2 schools for massed charter school. They're fantastic facilities. They built one from scratch up on State Road, and then they renovated the former Crown Court Concealed building to be a school, a mass charter school, and they're spectacular.
Sure. No, I saw the plans, and I the debate on public versus charter school it's across the board, and it's not necessarily partisan. I know Republicans who are for, I know Republicans who are against, and Democrats who are for, and Democrats who are against.
Drew, there are good public schools and there are bad public schools, and I'll say there are good charter schools and there's some challenging charter schools. Okay, always they have to be, I'm going to say, on the clock, looking about what's good for the kids. But a lot of times when people meet, what's good for the kids never comes up.
Sure, no, and I always tell people charter schools are public schools, and what I like about I am pro charter. I'm for school choice, and what it gives those in underserved communities that might not have a good public school, it gives them another option. So I am a fan of charter schools. I think there needs to be some level of more oversight on some, because you're right. There's some charter schools that just they're not making the grades. So I think there needs to be some oversight, some additional oversight to make sure that they're doing their job.
On that charter school CLE, it was put on by the school district, but it was put on in a very, very pro-school district way. And it just got to me because, and particularly since we've now had the Benjamin Franklin debacle with SLA.
With SLA, yeah.
Okay, and, it was a disgrace as to how that was done. I don't know how you don't know that the thing's not going to be completed for the day that they're coming back to school.
It was insane because so SLA used to be a block from my house, and I understood why they moved, because they were paying rent for a facility, and when the school district has empty buildings that they own, so I got it. I understood it, but they knew 6 months ago that space was not going to be done, and probably the kids at Ben Franklin shouldn't have been there, and SLA should never have moved in. They should have just stayed and paid rent for another year. Right. I mean, it was a poor decision. Anyone who was in construction management, project manager, knew 6 months ago that they should not have left. And they should not have gone into the school.
You say 6 months ago. I think they knew a year ago.
Yeah, it's possible, yeah.
And six months ago, they should have had a plan of how to place these kids in a safe environment to learn.
Sure. Well, it was easy with SLA. They could have just stayed, because I know Philadelphia Management Company. They would have been happy with allowing SLA to stay one more year, because I know for a fact they don't have anybody in the space yet.
Well, because if it's beautiful, comfortable space, other than saying your lease is done 18 months from now, they can go find a new tenant that they can retrofit the building. Okay, but that's like I told you, I'm on the board of City Trust. We just went through a whole thing with Aramark.
Sure.
Okay, they moved from our building at 1101 Market to 2400 Market.
And the trust owns where Aramark used to be.
Yeah. Well, they own the building. It's now going to be the Jefferson Tower. And actually, they're going to open up Jefferson's already moving in. They're not fully in there, but they are moving in.
Yeah. Interesting. So some other races on Tuesday. The obvious one is for mayor. So Mayor Jim Kenney is the incumbent, and the Republicans have a challenger in Billy Ciangelini.
Yeah. Republicans have not held the mayor's office since 1951, okay? And even then it was challenging, okay, because they did a charter reform and changed the whole thing about how the city operates, okay? And they didn't survive the thing, okay? But, yes, the overwhelming favor is Jim Kenney. But, Drew, I'm going to tell you, I think there's some angry people, okay, that are around, okay? I don't know if that amounts to a hill of beans, to tell you the truth. But, we've had former Democratic city council people who are now elected Republican committee people in the city, okay? Simply because they know they're no longer wanted. So
sure, no. In fact, a person who used to work, and I'm not going to out any people as Republican or Democrat, but a person who worked for Larry Farnese. In his office, I saw him the other day at a Republican event. I'm like, what are you doing here? He's like, well, I'm a Republican now. He said, the Democratic Party just went too far left for me, which was the exact same reason why I left. I said, I didn't leave the Democratic Party. Democratic Party left me.
Well, but the reason I went to John Street's class, and I've been going for 2 years, is simply because we can disagree without being disagreeable, okay? And that's what we spoke about, okay? We're not going to agree on every single issue. However, my disagreement is giving away everything for nothing, because ultimately the millennials will pay for it all.
Sure. And the challenge for Billy is, look, what is it, 7-1, 8-1 is the Republican to Democrat ratio.
Well, it's actually 6.5 to 1,
Six,
but
so
that
it's
doesn't really make it any better.
Which makes it not impossible. I mean, Katz almost did it, but Katz had a lot of money. Sam Katz raised a ton of money, and as a challenger for Billy, it is really challenging to raise money, especially now with the campaign finance rules that were put in basically after Sam Katz. I don't know if they were put in because of Sam Katz, but
all of it, and it's national, but in Pennsylvania, there are no limits what you can give to people in state or local elections. Although now that we have an ethics board and regulations in Philadelphia, they have what you can give a candidate for the term, okay? And there's annual caps, and it gets very complicated. And unfortunately, some of the uninformed have a hard time maintaining their campaign finance reports because you almost have to be a lawyer to do it, or an accountant.
On a local level, I know. So it's interesting. So I ran for city council at large. So I basically I did my campaign financing. Right. My wife was my treasurer, but I pretty much she looked over it. She was the official treasurer. She signed on the dotted line, but I'm the one that did it. And there are a lot of rules for the city. $3,000 individual max, $11,009 for a committee or a company. Now that did double because Alan Dom did put enough money own money in that it doubled to $6,000 and 21,800. But it makes it challenging. And you're right, at the state level, so I'm running for state rep, and so I'm starting to learn those. There's no restriction. You can do whatever you want.
There's no restrictions, and the tough part in running into Philadelphia, even for a state job, it's challenging because you have to get your finger on the pulse of the district or area of the city that you're running in, and all areas are not the same.
Sure. No, yeah. So I'm running the 182nd, which is Center City. But yeah, anybody, there is no limit. If you wanted to give me $10,000, Michael, you can. Feel free to give me $10,000 when I run my campaign. I know you're a LaSalle guy, so you got to be wealthy, right? Well, you're one of those wealthy LaSalle guys.
No, I know a lot of preppers who are way over. Okay. To me,
well, you said we're not Catholic, right? The Jesuits, the Christian Brothers are more Catholic than the Jesuits.
See, you guys had the Berg and brothers, okay, and I know it's challenging, but
all right. So we'll come back. We talked about the marriage race. We'll come back. We'll touch on. We'll pretty much deal for the most part in the next segment with the city council at large races and maybe some of the district races. So we will be back in a minute after this commercial break.
$150 over $90.
180 over 111.
160 over 110. I had a stroke.
This is what high blood pressure looks like. You might not feel its symptoms, but the results from a stroke are far from invisible or silent. If you've come off your treatment plan, get back on it, or talk with your doctor to create an exercise, diet, and medication plan that works for you. Go to loweryourhbp.org.
If I would have followed a treatment plan, I would not be in this situation.
Our hearts are made stronger by how we treat others.
Put her there.
The light you share can impact those around you, but so can the darkness.
Later, twerps!
Did Pete saying mean things bother you?
So when you reach out to another person, take a moment to consider how they will feel and let your heart be the key to making a difference. Because of you, someone's entire day, year, or even life can change.
In every heart, there's hope.
Welcome back. You are listening to Usula Radio, and I am Drew Murray, the host of the Republican Zone. I am here with my friend, Republican City Committee Chairman Michael Meehan. So let's start. Let's talk a little bit about the other races. We talked about Superior Court. We touched on the mayor. Another race that's really not a race because he is unchallenged. City Commissioner Al Schmidt will be running as Republican for City Commissioner. He's unchallenged, so.
Well,
I guess he's going to
for
win.
some reason, nobody stepped up to challenge him. Okay, and so
Al's a good guy. Yeah, I think he's doing a good job. I think he and Lisa Dealey are getting some a little bit of pushback on the new voting machines and the way that process went. But
but even that, believe it or not, I've had cause to go to their meetings, and I don't want to go back, to tell you the truth, simply because with all these pro people involved, it just gets too. They're all angry, okay, and that's very unfortunate this day and age.
Well, I say people like to talk at each other, and they don't listen anymore. I think we all need to listen a little more and maybe talk a little less. I always say that. So the big race here in the city of Philadelphia, the big races will be for city council, and just to give quick background, there are 17 city council people. 10 will come from districts, the 10 districts, and 7 will come out of the at-large race. So on the Republican side, there are 5 candidates in the hunt for what are traditionally 2 seats that have gone to the minority party. There are 7 total at-large candidates. Only 5 can come from the majority party, which in this case is the Democrats. So you have 5 Republicans who are going probably for, at max, 2 spots. And those are Councilman David O., Councilman Al Taubenberger are the incumbents. And then you have Dan Tinney, who's a ward leader in Northeast Philadelphia, Bill Heaney, who's a ward leader in Northeast Philadelphia, and Matt Wolf, a ward leader from West Philadelphia. So this is, I think, the most exciting race. And this is, well, maybe because it was the race I was in that I lost in the primary, but this is the biggest race I think that we're going to see on Tuesday.
But you were in the race, okay, but you know how challenging that was. And there's all kinds of outside experiences in all this because people with separate interests are trying to take care of themselves, okay? And, we had a primary, basically, that you came in 6th or 7th.
Sixth.
Okay, in the primary. So that's why he's not on the ballot right now. But we have 5 people on the ballot. But even in the primary, the incumbents didn't come in first in the
Correct.
primary.
Yeah, Al came in 2nd and David came in 5th. Yeah, David was about, I think, 1,000 votes ahead of me. I forget at this point. So it wasn't a huge number in order to come in the top 5. I was just outside. And actually, other than it was all about the way the voting and the numbers came in. It was purely ballot position, with the exception of Al Taubenberger was number 1 in the primary ballot position. Dan Tinney 2. They'll be flipped this time because Dan got the most votes.
But some will tell you that the number 1 primary vote getter has never lost in the general election.
Oh, is that right?
In this day and age, with all the challengers from the outside,
sure,
you don't know if that's going to come again because, too often they're just competing for places 6 and 7. Okay, I've always thought that they should be competing for 1 through 5.
Sure.
And ideally, we'd have 5 Republicans winning, but knowing the registration distribution, that's fantasy land.
Sure. No, I mean, normally, what are the numbers? Around 35,000 is what it'll take for a Republican to win, where the Democrats are getting close to 100,000 votes. So
exactly.
And you can only, and it's interesting, there are 7 at-large positions, but you can only vote for 5, which I don't necessarily fully understand, but I guess that's the way the city charter is
it's going to be
set up.
even more confusing with these new machines. And if you've gone to the demonstration, because I think the machines really almost want you to vote for 5, okay? Well, what if you just decided you were going to vote for 2?
Sure.
Okay? It may not let you out of the machine.
Oh, is that right? Yeah, we'll see. Yeah, because each candidate is going to go in and say it's called a bullet vote. Do you want just vote for me? So if it's David O, he's going to walk in and say just vote for me, and that's it. Because if you vote for more, if there's really one person you really want to win that race, then you vote for one. It's called a bullet vote. So, and I guess we'll see. Yeah, I've been to a lot of events where they had the machines, but there was a long line of people who were trying to figure it out. So
and many of those people at those events were election board people.
Yes,
simply because it's going to be very challenging, particularly for your senior citizens and the less technology sophisticated people to operate these machines.
And I think as long as, and we'll see, as long as the board of elections people are well versed on the machines, I think it'll be fine. But there's always going to be a learning curve, and it'll be interesting to see. Luckily, they didn't roll them out next year in 2020 because those are going to be lines around the block no matter what. And if the machines are difficult to learn how to use and challenging for end users, you would see lines around 2 blocks because it would be so hard to figure it out.
Well, that's the biggest election that ever occurs anywhere is the presidential election.
Yeah.
Okay, and this the second highest is probably in Philadelphia. It used to be the mayor's thing, but I think it's now becoming the governor's thing. So that's the lower number. The lowest number really involves the city controller and the district attorney. Mm-hmm. Okay, that election year.
So yeah, it'll be interesting to see, what happens this year because I think it's been 70 years that the Republicans have held those 2 spots on city council at large, and this year there is a third party threat. There are lesser parties, and we'll see. And my opinion on this is I think it's going to be extremely challenging, and I think only if you've been in an election or or someone like you, Michael, who kind of sees the way it happens, it's extremely challenging to be an independent or a lesser third-party candidate because there are over 1,600 polling stations in the city of Philadelphia. And if you're a candidate, and especially on the Democratic side, you want people outside of each one of those polling stations.
Philadelphia has 20% of all the polling places in the state of Pennsylvania.
Wow.
Okay, so it's very, very challenging.
And you want someone either handing out a ballot with your name on it, whether it's a bullet vote ballot or a ballot with your name on it. So, and obviously the Democrats, they probably have 2 people at every station. Right. Republicans, they have, I would say, people at the vast majority of those polling stations.
But I'm going to confess to you, basically, I want to go to all the multi-poll locations and make sure they're staffed with the youngest, most energetic, enthusiastic people.
And what Michael means there is there'll be, especially, you don't see much in Center City, but in Northeast Philly, you could have George Washington High School. That will be the polling station. They'll have 4 divisions in one building.
Some locations have 8 to 10.
Oh, really? I didn't even know that. Oh, no, yeah, where I am, it's in Center City. But Center City, our divisions are 2 blocks, like maybe a 6-block radius.
If you go to the suburbs, those divisions have somewhat around, they might have, in their polling divisions or precincts, they might have 3,000 people. Okay, each division in the city of Philadelphia may only have between 700 and 1,000.
Wow.
Okay, so it's a challenge.
And which brings me to the point of why it is so hard for an independent who's not backed by any party or a third party that doesn't have the infrastructure. The Democratic Party, traditionally it's a huge party in the city of Philadelphia, but the Republican Party is a huge party as well. I mean, how many? Do you know the number? How many registered Republicans are there? Is it like
the last thing I saw was about 120,000.
120. So, and because of that, there is the infrastructure that the Republicans have. They have the 66 ward leaders. They have the committee people. So they have the foot soldiers who are going to be out there on election day helping to get Republican candidates elected.
Right, but unfortunately, we're dividing ourselves because all these people are competing to be 6 or 7, okay, for the demise of their running mates.
So yeah, well, it's going to be interesting, and nothing against any of the independent candidates. They're working hard. Joe Cox, I've become friendly with Joe because I see him out there on the campaign trail. It's going to be very challenging for him to win because he doesn't have the backing of a party. Sherri Cohen, we talked about Sherri a little bit. She's running under a Better Council party. Sherri, it was interesting because she ran as a Democrat already in the primary.
Yes.
and her name was on the ballot. I don't think you could push her number.
No.
Yeah.
What she did was she stayed beyond the last day to withdraw, okay, and then she used, and I'll equate it to subterfuge, to get off the ballot by going into court with giving notice to nobody who was her opponent that she was doing this in order to get out, so that she can file as an independent or a third party.
No, and she got on. She won the court case. I didn't think she had a chance to win. I mean, she ran in the primary as a Democrat.
But she didn't run in the primary, okay, because her thing was locked. But she did appear, I think, on some ballots and on some machines.
I'm pretty sure when I voted, her name was on it. And they may have put like tape over it, maybe something so you couldn't see the name, or maybe you just couldn't push
But
the
Drew,
button.
the whole thing, and I was the one that challenged her petition, was all over the candidate's affidavit. And the candidate's affidavit she signed, and she is a lawyer, says that she wasn't a candidate in the primary and hadn't been on the ballot. Well, how did she sign the candidate's affidavit then?
Well, she put in her petitions. She put in her 1,000 minimum required signatures. So.
Yeah, but they're only required to look at them. Okay, it's not like the commissioner's office makes a judgment of good signatures or that, other than trying to count that she has 1,000 signatures. Okay, they don't have any involvement in looking at affidavits and otherwise eligibility.
So there are a number of independents running, but I think the people who are getting at least the most press at this point are Kendra Brooks and Nicholas O'Rourke, who are with the Working Families Party. Now, anyone, we live in a democracy, anyone who wants to run should run. My problem with Kendra Brooks and Nicholas O'Rourke is they're Democrats. Let's face it. They're lifelong Democrats. They're running under the quote unquote banner of the Working Families Party, but they're Democrats.
They're still registered Democrats.
Are they still?
Yeah.
They are purely registered Democrats.
Yes. Okay, and if you look at the people who had they withdrawn, who substitute, they are registered Democrats. Okay, it's basically the problem with both parties is they're all being challenged right and left.
So the issue, what bothers me is, so right now there are 17 council people. There are 14 Democrats, and then you have Brian O'Neill, Al Taubenberger, and David O. So there are only 3 Republicans. And to me, this feels like, and I don't think Bob Brady is behind it at all, but it just feels like the Democrats are trying to get to the point where there's at least what they want. Well, they want 17 people on city council. So we'll get back to this. We're going to take a quick commercial break, and we'll be back with Mike Meehan in a minute.
Don't wait. Communicate. Make your emergency plan today.
Welcome back. You were listening to USLA Radio. I am Drew Murray, the host of the Republican Zone, here with my friend, Republican City Committee Chairman Michael Meehan. So we're starting to talk about, what I call the third party threat from basically two Democrats who are running under the banner of the Working Families Party. And people ask me, when I talk about this, they say, why are you saying they're Democrats? And what I say is, well, I know Kendra Brooks literally sent letters to all the committee people and said, I'm a lifelong Democrat, please endorse me.
Well, I checked their registrations. They are still Democrats.
And they are still Democrats. So, what the city of Philadelphia City Council needs a level of what I'll call political diversity. And right now they don't have it. But now the Democrats are trying to get 2 more. And they're trying to get 3 more. I have no problem, obviously, with Judy Moore running against Brian O'Neill in the 10th District. But I have a problem with Democrats trying to take these 2 spots. I have a big problem with Democrats who are endorsing the Working Family Party's candidates. Helen Gim is a friend of mine. She's my neighbor. But she's endorsing the Working Family Party's candidates because and this is her words, we don't want the party of Trump to have any voice on city council.
Well, the unfortunate thing at that is what they need, and you just saw it this weekend out in Chicago with the police chief's event that went on out there. Okay, that mayor and that police chief out in Chicago decided they weren't going to talk to him. He has many resources that he could share with them, but they apparently do not care about it. But with all the shootings that they have out there, you would think they'd be looking for any help they could get. I
agree. And again, it goes back to communication. And Kendra Brooks and Nicholas O'Rourke, so it's not just Helen Gim. I think Malcolm Kenyatta, I believe the state rep has endorsed them. I know Brian Sims, who I will be challenging in the 182nd. He's endorsed these candidates. So they're not even trying to hide the fact. They're just trying to take these 2 additional seats to get Democrats and Democratic views, as they'll say progressive views, on city council.
Well, but I deal with many Democrats, okay? And the unfortunate thing is with these so-called progressives, they're challenging even moderate Democrats that they're even in existence. Okay, and that's never a good thing because we at least have to be able to sit down and have a conversation.
Absolutely. I consider myself a moderate. When I was a Democrat, I said I'm a very conservative Democrat. Now I used to say I'm a liberal Republican, but I think the Democratic Party has moved so far left that I call myself a moderate Republican. And you need these voices on city council. If not, I always say sometimes the best answer is the one in the middle. That's what compromise is all about. And if you have 16, 17 people who all think the exact same way, there's not going to be any compromise, and it's just going to be, and there's not going to be any diverse ideas on city council. It's going to become a purely just tax and spend, and there's going to be no checks and balances.
Well,
tax and spend.
Tax and spend. And I heard a speech of Alan Dom the other night. I was up at the 57th Ward, and he said when Jim Kenney took office, real estate taxes in Philadelphia produced $1 billion. This year it produced $1.7 billion. Now, some of that 70% increase is certainly because of the tax abatements coming off, okay? But where's all that money going? Okay.
Well, the assessments are going up, right? I know mine have skyrocketed, and there's a way to mitigate that a little bit by changing the millage rate.
But believe it or not, the courts are being befuddled by this, okay? And in July, there were cases where in Philadelphia in which the experts that the city was using were being challenged.
Sure.
And believe it or not, this week there's an opinion in the Commonwealth Court saying, agreeing with that judge, her decision got affirmed.
Sure.
So,
yeah, the Office of Property Assessments, they don't know how to do their job. They're assessing parcels that are literally attached, right, that on the same size, they look the same, they feel the same, and they'll have significantly different tax structures.
Yeah, but I'm not sure in the old days they used to go out and actually look at a property. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure they do that anymore.
No, I don't think they do at all. I think they're just purely using the comps. Right. And the problem with just using comps, and I'm a big fan of the tax abatement. I think it's brought a lot of jobs to the city, and I think overall it will increase the taxes that we collect in the city of Philadelphia because more people are coming in. But when they're doing those comps, they're using the tax abated properties whose values are inflated, but they're not supposed to use the tax abated properties until they come off the abatement, meaning after 10 years.
But the problem that you have is it's destroying neighborhoods because you have renovated properties are abated, and whole properties at new construction is abated. So neighbors are being challenging each other because I'm having to pay more taxes because my neighbor has an abated property.
But the way the legislation was written, that's illegal. And the Office of Property Assessment they've almost basically admitted that they've done it. Until that property comes off the abatement and is paying taxes.
Well, Drew, they went even further. They discovered a new way to tax the value of the ground. Okay, and you would think ground is ground. Okay, and then you come up with a thing. But then they've decided they were going to, quote, finesse it, okay, and act as if that value of that ground went up.
Well, and that is interesting. And I will say that the value of ground in the city of Philadelphia is undervalued. Now, what's unfair isn't, I don't know if you can say people who are living in abated properties, if it's unfair, but I know a lot of my friends and neighbors who live in abated properties, they've like doubled the value of the land in order to raise revenues even on the abated properties because the land itself isn't improved. The land is never abated. Right. So if they raise the value of the land, then they can increase the value of the taxes, which I think is completely unfair. Now, I will say that I think property in Philadelphia is the actual parcel of land is only worth about 10%, which is just wrong. I mean, when you talk about real estate, it's location, location, location. It should be closer to 15 to 20%. I think in most major cities, that's where it is. So I do think they should raise the value of land in the city of Philadelphia, just not necessarily on abated properties, because it's kind of, in my mind, it's kind of unfair to kind of double the taxes on the land.
And it should be done over time, not immediately.
Well, you could do it immediately on parcels that are not abated. And what you could do is you could do it in a way so the land is valued more, but then you decrease the value of the actual structure, which means it's a net zero increase. But if anything happens, if something is renovated, if a building is torn down and the improvement, then the abatement's not going to have as much of an effect on the tax collection. So
Alan Bukovitz had a whole plan about how to raise the value of ground. The unfortunate thing is he didn't win. Okay, so it's not like we're going to go back and all of a sudden do this all right, because the values are going up. When you increase the value of the land, it's going to go up with the value. The whole assessment's going to go up.
Sure, no. So as we're coming close to a conclusion, I want to hit on a little bit of a few of the district races. So the Republicans will have 4 candidates in the district races. Number one, we'll go with the 10th district, Councilman Brian O'Neill, who is running against Judy Moore as an incumbent. And then the other 3 are Duke Orsino running in the 1st district against Mark Squilla, Michael Bradley running in the 2nd district against Kenyatta Johnson, and in the 6th district, Pete Smith running against Bobby Heenan. Now so you have 4, when I say you, meaning the Republican Party has 4 district candidates. Is that the most in your recent memory? And I think it's a good thing. I think.
Yeah, well, I think it's the most in recent memory. The unfortunate thing is, as I said earlier, we used to have a city council person down in South Philadelphia. We had a city council person up in. We had at least 5 total. Mm-hmm. Okay, so it's a challenge. Just people putting their families through this and now in this social media age, people are relentless, okay, giving it to you. And believe it or not, because I know with my own family, okay, me making decisions 25 years ago have affected my kids.
Sure.
Okay, because, somebody didn't like the decision I made.
And running a campaign, running for city council, running for state rep, it's a full-time job. I mean, I know that personally. So I really commend, obviously Brian O'Neill's an incumbent, but Duke, Michael, Pete, And I think they know it's going to be tough. It's going to be a challenge, and they know they're long shots, but they're out there hitting the pavement. They're knocking on doors, trying to raise money. It's extremely challenging to raise money as a challenger and as a Republican.
And the unfortunate thing is we're now and really going through this presidential thing. They want to know how much somebody's raised in the last 24 hours. Okay, it's very challenging, and I'm not a fan of this whole Democratic thing. Not that I'm against the Democrats having a candidate, but this protracted primary season is a challenge.
Sure.
Okay, and when they add up the total, all that these people have spent, I guess that's a full employment thing.
Well, we'll wrap it up here. So good luck to all the candidates on Tuesday, specifically all the Republican candidates. And as I finish off every show, please remember, go vote on November 5th. Thank you, everyone. All right. Thank you, Michael.